Imagine a philosophy that doesn't just acknowledge life's shadows, but sees them as essential to understanding the entire picture. This is the realm of Arthur Schopenhauer's pessimism. But what does it truly mean to embrace pessimism according to Schopenhauer? Let's dive deeper into this intriguing perspective. Pessimism, in the philosophical landscape shaped by Schopenhauer, is not merely a gloomy outlook or a tendency towards negativity. Instead, it's a profound recognition of the inherent difficulties and sufferings of life. Schopenhauer's pessimism is about acknowledging that suffering and dissatisfaction are not aberrations, but the very fabric of human existence. Unlike everyday negativity, which might express itself as a reaction to specific unfavorable events or a general disdain for life, Schopenhauer's philosophical pessimism is a more comprehensive, almost clinical observation of life's structure. It does not involve despair or hopelessness, but rather a clear-eyed, rational understanding that the root of all suffering lies in unending desires and the ceaseless striving of the human will. Schopenhauer built upon the foundations laid by Immanuel Kant and was significantly influenced by Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism. From Kant, he inherited the idea that our experiences of the world are shaped by our perceptions, which are inherently limited and subjective. From Eastern thought, he embraced the notion that desire is the root cause of all suffering. This synthesis led Schopenhauer to argue that life is a perpetual struggle driven by a blind will, an insatiable force that underlies all existence. The core of Schopenhauer's pessimism lies in his concept of the will, a primal, irrational force that drives all beings. This will does not lead to fulfillment, but instead to constant conflict, as every creature's desires clash with the desires of others, leading to an endless cycle of frustration and pain. Schopenhauer posits that true happiness is not found in fulfilling desires, but in quelling them. He suggests that peace comes from minimizing our wants and expectations, thus reducing the scope for disappointment. This approach is radically different from the pursuit of perpetual happiness through acquisition and achievement, which he sees as futile and often exacerbating suffering. By redefining happiness as the absence of pain rather than the presence of pleasure, Schopenhauer offers a way to achieve a more stable and enduring contentment. This does not mean embracing misery, but finding freedom in detachment from incessant desires. In embracing pessimism, Schopenhauer encourages us to look directly at life's hardships and accept them as integral to the human experience. This might seem daunting, but it is through this acceptance that we can find a deeper, more meaningful kind of happiness. His philosophy challenges us to transform our understanding of happiness and find peace not by escaping life's trials, but by facing them with a clear and resolute mind. As we delve deeper into Schopenhauer's philosophy, it becomes evident how central the concept of suffering is to his understanding of the human condition. Let's explore how Schopenhauer articulates this pervasive element of life and its inevitable ties to our existence. Schopenhauer viewed the human condition through a lens of inherent struggle and pain. According to him, life is characterized not just by temporary struggles, but by continuous suffering. This perspective stems from his belief that all life is driven by the will, a blind, relentless force. For Schopenhauer, suffering is not merely physical pain or emotional distress. It encompasses the perpetual dissatisfaction that comes from unsatisfied desires. Each desire fulfilled only leads to new desires, creating an endless cycle of wanting and longing that never truly brings satisfaction. Schopenhauer argues that suffering is inevitable because the very nature of our desires ensures that we can never be completely at peace. We are always reaching for the next thing, the next moment of pleasure, only to find that each achievement brings its own form of discontent. This incessant striving is what Schopenhauer identifies as the expression of the will in human life. The will itself is aimless, striving endlessly and fruitlessly, which is mirrored in our own actions and desires. Thus, our suffering is a direct manifestation of the will's ceaseless force. Desire, then, is the culprit behind much of human suffering. Schopenhauer points out that our constant dissatisfaction is the result of our desires clashing with the limitations of the world and with the desires of others. Each individual, driven by their own will, is locked in a struggle against the world and everyone else in it. Understanding this aspect of human suffering is crucial, Schopenhauer believes, because it shifts how we approach life. Recognizing that suffering is ingrained in the fabric of existence helps us to reduce the intensity of our desires and seek solace in more attainable, modest forms of satisfaction. Schopenhauer's grim outlook might seem disheartening, but it carries practical implications for how we live our lives. By accepting that suffering is unavoidable, we can begin to find ways to mitigate its impact through philosophical reflection, ethical living, and a focus on inner development rather than external achievements. Thus, Schopenhauer's portrayal of the human condition as one of inherent suffering serves not as a call to despair, but as an invitation to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. By confronting and accepting the reality of suffering, we can aim for a kind of serenity that is undisturbed by the endless chase of desires. Having established the pervasive nature of suffering in the human condition, let's now turn to a critical element that Schopenhauer believes fuels this suffering: desire. How does desire play into his philosophical framework, and what can we learn from it about achieving a more serene life? Desire is a central theme in Schopenhauer's philosophy. He argues that all human actions are driven by desires, which are manifestations of the will. These desires are incessant. They are what keep us in a state of constant striving and dissatisfaction. In Schopenhauer's view, desire can be anything from basic needs like hunger and shelter to more complex wants like love, power, and recognition. Each of these desires promises satisfaction at the moment of attainment, yet the pleasure they provide is fleeting, often leaving a greater sense of emptiness in their wake. The cyclical nature of desire and its fulfillment leads to what Schopenhauer describes as the wheel of suffering. Every satisfied desire quickly gives way to a new desire, perpetuating a cycle that rarely allows for lasting peace or happiness. This is because the satisfaction of a desire merely pauses our longing temporarily, only for it to resurface, sometimes with even greater force. Schopenhauer points out that our desires are essentially insatiable. That is, the nature of desire is such that it is endlessly renewable. Once one desire is fulfilled, another soon takes its place, leading to an infinite regression of wants and needs. This endless pursuit is what binds individuals to a continuous state of suffering. Furthermore, Schopenhauer emphasizes the illusory nature of completion that desires often promise. We are led to believe that fulfilling a particular desire will complete us in some fundamental way. However, this completion is an illusion. No single desire's fulfillment can truly bring the completeness we seek. To mitigate the suffering caused by desire, Schopenhauer advocates for minimizing our desires. This doesn't necessarily mean abandoning all ambitions, but rather approaching them with a clear understanding of their transient nature and their inability to provide lasting happiness. Embracing this aspect of Schopenhauer's thought can have liberating effects. It encourages a detachment from materialistic and transient pursuits and promotes a focus on internal development and personal growth. This shift can lead to a more profound, stable form of contentment that is not contingent on external circumstances. Understanding the role of desire in our lives, as Schopenhauer presents it, offers a pathway to tranquility that is radically different from the constant chase after fleeting pleasures. It invites us to reconsider what truly matters and to realign our pursuits accordingly. After examining the role of desire and its impact on our continual suffering, it becomes crucial to understand the driving force behind these desires, according to Schopenhauer, the will to live. Let's explore this profound concept and its implications for our understanding of existence and striving. The will to live is perhaps the most central concept in Schopenhauer's philosophy. It represents an irrational blind force that underpins all existence. This will is not just a desire to exist, it is the very essence of our being, pushing us towards survival, procreation, and the endless pursuit of desires. Schopenhauer describes the will as the metaphysical essence behind every living thing, driving all actions and desires without purpose or final goal. It is an incessant force, always seeking expression through various desires, whether they lead to joy or suffering. In humans, the will manifests as our basic instincts and drives, such as hunger, thirst, sexual desire, and the instinct for survival. These drives are so powerful that they can override rational thought and lead individuals to act in ways that might not align with their long-term well-being. According to Schopenhauer, the will to live is inescapable and binds all creatures to a cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. This cycle is the source of much human misery, as the satisfaction of one desire merely leads to the emergence of new desires, trapping individuals in a perpetual state of striving and suffering. The will is not only the driver behind our actions, but also a fundamental part of our identity. Schopenhauer suggests that our individual wills are manifestations of the same underlying will that permeates the universe. This perspective leads to a profound existential insight that individual desires are not just personal, but part of a larger universal drive. Schopenhauer's concept of the will leads to a deterministic view of human behavior, where free will is merely an illusion. Our actions, though seemingly choices, are ultimately dictated by the will's push for expression and fulfillment. This viewpoint challenges conventional notions of personal autonomy and moral responsibility. Despite its deterministic overtones, Schopenhauer does offer a way out of the suffering caused by the will. He advocates for the ascetic denial of the will, a form of deep resignation where one ceases to affirm the will's desires. This path, though difficult, can lead to moments of tranquility and freedom from the relentless cycle of desire. Understanding the will to live provides not only a clearer insight into the nature of human suffering, but also offers a potential pathway to overcoming it. By recognizing the pervasive influence of the will, we can work towards detaching from its demands and finding peace in resignation and acceptance. Having explored the inescapable drive of the will to live, we now turn to a strategy Schopenhauer offers for coping with this relentless force: embracing pessimism. Let's consider how adopting a pessimistic outlook can actually lower our expectations and lead to a more peaceful existence. Schopenhauer's advocacy for pessimism is not about fostering a negative outlook, but about adopting a realistic view of life's limitations and inherent suffering. By embracing pessimism, he suggests we can adjust our expectations to align more closely with the reality of our existence. Expectations play a crucial role in our experience of happiness and dissatisfaction. High expectations often lead to disappointment when reality fails to match them. Schopenhauer argues that by lowering these expectations, by acknowledging that suffering and setbacks are normal, we can shield ourselves from severe disappointments and enhance our overall contentment. By expecting less, we are not taken by surprise when difficulties arise. This mindset helps us to cope better with challenges and reduces the emotional turmoil associated with failed expectations. Schopenhauer sees this approach as a form of wisdom, a way to navigate the tumult of life with greater equanimity. Embracing pessimism changes our baseline for happiness. Instead of striving for constant joy or perfection, goals that are often unattainable, we find peace in stability and modest pleasures. This shift can lead to a more sustainable form of happiness that is less dependent on external circumstances. In practical terms, adopting a pessimistic outlook means preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. This can manifest in various aspects of life, such as financial planning, personal relationships, and career aspirations. By preparing for potential setbacks, we can create strategies that enhance resilience and reduce the impact of negative outcomes. In relationships, A pessimistic approach can lead to healthier dynamics. By not expecting perfection from others, we can foster more understanding and compassion, qualities that strengthen bonds and lead to more fulfilling interactions. While pessimism is often misunderstood as a purely negative trait, Schopenhauer's version is about clear-eyed realism. It is about seeing the world and human nature without illusions and preparing oneself for the inherent challenges of life. Embracing pessimism, according to Schopenhauer, offers a paradoxical route to happiness. By lowering our expectations and accepting life's inherent struggles, we can attain a state of inner tranquility that is robust against life's inevitable upheavals. Consider your own life and the expectations you hold. How might embracing a more pessimistic outlook change your response to disappointments? Could this approach lead you to a more peaceful and contented life?